Felina Mekealoha, mahalo for joining us today for the fourth episode of the Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists Confest virtual series entitled Return to the Source. I'm Haile Opua Baker from Kapa'a, Kauai. I'm a board member of CAATA and one of the co-chairs of the 7th National Asian American Theater Conference and Festival, which will be held here in Hawaii at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Before introducing today's episode, I wanted to congratulate President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. As an Indigenous artist of color, having a woman of color in a leadership position in the White House is a beacon of hope and light for our future. This is a time for change, a time to recognize the injustices and inequities of the past, a time to reform, a time to restore a new equilibrium for all people. And this shift is also an opportunity to create an administration that reflects the diversity of America. It's time to brown up the White House. My aloha is with President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris as they prepare for transitioning America into a space of hope, kindness, empathy, inclusion, and truth for a thriving tomorrow. Mahalo in advance for your endurance and commitment to repair the country. And we all understand that there is a lot of work to be done. We are hopeful that the new administration will support artists and restore the country's vitality. Return to the source. This series was designed to bridge conversations with theater artists of color, ground us in our artistry, and foster community collaboration via this virtual platform. These monthly gatherings encourage discussion around relevant topics and issues that we're facing during these uncertain times of the global pandemic. Like in September with the conversation around modeling solidarity and using theater as political action, as well as the episode in October that focused on artists on the front lines and their creativity and the changes that we are facing during COVID-19. We truly hope that this virtual series grounds our monthly conversations in the theme for the upcoming Confest, which is Ku'u'aina, Ku'upiko, Ku'ukahua, our beloved land, navel, and foundation, which serve as inspiration for everything we do here in Hawaii. Being as we have all come from the land, our umbilical cord reaches to it, stringing together the multitudes of generations that are our foundation. This reciprocal relationship of Aina, Piko, and Kahua enable us to reconnect to the source. The source is our Aina. The source is our Piko. The source is our Kahua. In recognizing each of these things, we are able to commune with the divine inspiration that is our source. And now I want to introduce our host for today's conversation, founding CAATA board member and the artistic director of Art to Action, Andrea Asif. Andrea is a writer, performer, director, and cultural organizer, and we are ecstatic about the panel and performances that Andrea has curated for us here today. Nomadic Imagination, Transnational Homelands, and Cultural Return, our fourth episode of Return to the Source. Aloha, Andrea.
Aloha so much, Haile, for that beautiful introduction and grounding, and so excited and honored to be the host for today as a CAATA board partner. And I cannot wait for us to be able to gather when it is safe to do so again in Hawaii with you and all of the wonderful artists that we will get to meet there. So I am honored to be able to bring this episode to you and be part of this series with all the wonderful tonight. Thank you so much for welcoming us.
Mahalo.
As Hailey said, I am Andrea Asaf. I'm calling, oh, thank you, mahalo. Calling in from Tampa, Florida, which is the Seminole. And we'll say good night and thank you to Hailey. She will certainly be back for future episodes. So tonight's episode is the 4th episode. And our themes are this idea of nomadic imagination, transnational homelands, and cultural return. I am a longtime board member of CAATA, and CAATA has played a key role in being a host and a convening space for artists who are of Manasa or Middle Eastern, North African, South Asian descent, and artists who are we identify under so many different terms and umbrellas in our very, very complex community, from Southwest Asia to Central Asia, to our relationship to South Asia. And CAATA has been a space that has welcomed the umbrella of all of our identities and has hosted in 2016 a pre-conference for Southwest and Central Asian American artists that was one of several gatherings that has led to the evolution of a new organization or a new national coalition called MINATMA, or the Middle East North African Theater Makers Alliance. And so CAATA and MINATMA have a long-standing relationship that we hope to build on with this episode and in the future. So this event tonight will include scenes from artists who were selected for the 2020 Confest that was to be in Hawaii and of course had to be postponed due to the pandemic. But we will get to see selections of work by the festival artists, by 2 of the festival artists tonight, and along with a panel discussion by additional invited guests. So the videos we will see tonight include excerpts from Ada, Questions for My Father, a new musical with book, music, lyrics by New York Musical Festival award-winning theater artist Aya Aziz, directed by Arpita Mukherjee of Hypocrite Theater Company. So we will get to see an excerpt of that production, which I'm very excited about. And you'll get to meet both Aya and Arpita in our panel discussion. And we'll also see a video about a piece called The Red Shador that has many, many iterations by performance artist Anita U. Ali, who is a Muslim American artist, not from the MENA part of the world, but we wanted to have a very inclusive conversation, recognizing that in this time period we've all been living through, Islamophobia and its many manifestations affects all of us, regardless of our religious identity or affiliation. And in that way has impacted artists and communities from our communities here in the United States to North Africa and Southwest Asia and Central Asia, as we call the Middle East, to South Asia, and all the way to Southeast Asia, and all across the Asian continent, as well as here in the Americas. And so for this conversation, we will look at both works of art and see how they contribute to our thinking about this idea of nomadic imagination and transnational homelands and cultural return. And we'll be joined, after we see some artwork, by a wonderful, exciting panel, which I will tell you about in just a moment, that includes Arpita Mukherjee, who directed Ada, Heather Raffo, Iraqi-American playwright and actress, and Khaloud Sawaf, who is a theater director from Syria, now living in Arkansas in the United States. And in addition to these fantastic panelists whom you'll meet later, we will also have a special video message that I think of as both a rumination on tonight's themes as well as a provocation from Jamil Khoury, who is the artistic director of Silk Road Rising and also a CAATA board member. So W.E.B. Du Bois often said, begin with art, because art tries to take us outside of ourselves. It is a matter of trying to create an atmosphere and a context so conversation can flow back and forth and we can be influenced with each other. So we are going to start with art. And I'd like you to please welcome Aya Aziz, who will introduce an excerpt of her play, Ada, Questions for My Father. Hello, Aya. Welcome. You might be muted, Aya.
I'm muted. There you are. There you are. Hello. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity and for such a timely conversation. So this clip you're going to see, Questions for My Father, is a semi-autobiographical story about a family kind of split across continents and cultural expectations and dreams. And the clip that you're going to see is, I think, begins with a satirization of the Orient. And we thought it would be enjoyable to open the show with kind of the, I don't know if folks have seen many adaptations of I've seen so many adaptations of 1001 Nights that have inspired this song in me, and just like in general. And honestly, you know, my own understanding of the East, the Far East, you know, growing up as a kid and kind of longing for this world and getting it through the novels that I read as a young person. And so you'll see a satirization of that. And then I think the clip will move into the story. So yeah, I look forward to the discussion after this.
Thank you for sharing your work. Let's see it.
1916, they agreed. France takes a mountain in Britain's the sea, and they sat and waited patiently to see what lines they draw me. My history is up for sale to ogle in minute detail. I can tell 1,001 tales of mysteries behind my veil.
university, the Arab world erupted in mass protest. First in Tunis, then Egypt, Oman, Yemen, Syria, Morocco, until 13 nations were suddenly alive with revolution. On January 28th, army tanks rolled into the streets of Cairo. I saw it secondhand, standing at the window of a restaurant, watching the television inside. It felt so far away. I felt far away. But I knew how monumental the moment was because I could see how much it meant to my dad. He was with me in New York. He usually visits that time of year for my birthday. We spent that winter together in protest.
Khalid Saeed was killed by police.
Shaimet al-Sabah was shot in the back.
Crushed to death on marble steps.
She was carrying a wreath of roses.
In Sidi Gaber.
In Cairo.
He was a musician.
She was a poet.
He was hopeful.
She was a mother.
But his passion posed a threat.
The people saw it happen.
On the steps of a cafe.
Bullets among roses.
Face broken.
They placed her in a plastic chair and there she bled to death.
How strong are the factions working to undermine the opposition? Are they fundamentalists?
What is the future of democracy in Egypt? Any thoughts on Libya? What do the people want?
I've always wanted to be Egyptian enough to explain Egypt. As the daughter of my Egyptian father, I felt it was my responsibility, but I didn't grow up with my dad. He moved abroad for work when I was a kid, and though I wanted to be close to him and his side of the world, I've never known Egypt as an Egyptian. Dad, what does the future look like for Egypt? What is ISIS really? Wasn't Gittu part of the Brotherhood? Is this why you never want to go back? My father was the first of his family to emigrate. He left Egypt for New York, where he met my mom, a white American woman. They met at a bodega. Dad was bagging groceries, and my mother was finishing up her doctorate degree. Her parents were confused and concerned. They'd read Not Without My Daughter, but my parents married anyway. Then Dad went back to school, got a master's degree, and eventually a job with the United Nations. And he became his family's success story. My father's siblings were educated as well, but higher education didn't change their lives in the way it did for my dad. He had gone to school in the West. They had gone to school in Egypt. And when they graduated, they couldn't find work. There was no work. Two of my dad's siblings, my Aunt Hadia and my Uncle Abbas, came to the United States about 15 years after my dad. The rest went to neighboring Arab countries, wherever they could. Only my Aunt Nisa stayed. She studied accounting and worked in taxation. As a kid, I spent my summers in Egypt with my Aunt Nisa, her husband, and her two daughters, Dina and Mona. Aunt Nisa was my favorite aunt. She was my father's older sister, the savant of the family. She was strong and hardworking, and she'd raised her daughters to be the same. I loved her, and I loved my cousins. They lived on the 4th floor of a modest apartment in Alexandria, in a middle-class neighborhood where being middle-class meant stability without having much. I think of her street like most streets in Iskandria, dusty. Dust covers everything in that city. The ground is a thick layer of beige. Everything from the cars to the shop windows wears that emblem of the desert. Her street was no different. And when I think about it, there was really nothing externally charming about that street. It was just yellow cemented buildings, balconies, and hanging clothes. And sometimes when I visited, I'd pass dead pups from the stray dogs outside, their bodies bloating in the heat. And I think of how bizarre it was that my Aunt Nisa's home was my sanctuary. But it was sanctuary.
Thank you, Aya, for that work. It makes us want to see the rest of the show. I can't wait till we have the opportunity to. Oh, I think you might be muted again.
Ada. Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. Hey.
Hi. Yeah, it would be such a joy to be in community with that cast and Arpita as, director, really creative developer of the show with me. And it would be an honor. We are so excited.
And so it shall be when we are able to gather again in Hawaii for the next CAATA Confest. So when I was thinking about how to frame this episode, it was really informed by your work and Anita's work that we'll see in a minute. And so I wonder about, I have to tell you, one of the things that I really love about that video excerpt is the transition into the 21st century from the, because also growing up Arab American in the United States, our heads were filled with all these fantastical ideas about our homelands that often are not at all related to our actual cultural experience or family experience, right? And so I just wonder, how this theme of cultural return through our artistic work resonates with you, and how you think about that when you're creating work.
It's such a good question, and thank you for posing it. I definitely wanted to explore the feeling of longing, something that is very present for me as an only child who kind of grew up with trying to grasp onto whatever fantasy place, that could take her to, that could take me to my dad's world. My dad was this kind of hero in the distance that I was so hungry to know. I was so proud to be Egyptian. And then I completely fell in love with a world that was so different from what I had grown up understanding. And I meant to say before in the preface that opening number was heavily influenced by Aladdin, which was my, although I never really loved Aladdin as a kid, and it was probably because I was confused because I didn't see my father or his essence or values in it, but that was home. And so it
is very confusing.
Very confusing, right? But yeah, I wanted to explore this feeling of longing for a world, a place, a memory as it's disappearing, as it's changing. Certainly in my life, kind of losing so much of the Middle East, the Arab world, really before I could get the chance to explore it, because I grew up in just an era of continuous war, and kind of learning of these places from my father's childhood or my father's life that meant so much to him that were then being lost, whether in Damascus or, I mean, when I think of longing for a world you can't return to, I think of Palestinians in Palestine. I think of Yemenis. I think of Syrians, Iraqis. And I've seen how this longing, one, shaped me in my childhood, but also as it shaped the people in my family I care about, whether that's a longing for an Egypt they can't return to because they're in debt. They come and in pursuit of American dream because the economy is so awful and must in Egypt, and then kind of get sucked into the supply chains of that prey on migrant people and migrant workers, or longing for the U.S. after being forced out of the United States, and having that longing for a home that you can't return to because which is a story that I explore in Eda, having family members who were people who grew up in the U.S. who understood themselves as Egyptian and American, and suddenly had to experience a whole new nation and find themselves in Egypt as teenagers because they couldn't return home. And so that answers your question. That was a huge roundabout way of life.
No, thank you for that. It's definitely a theme that I think plays through the artistic work of many, as you said, many immigrant and migrant communities, and second and third generation artists in the United States, and certainly in our communities. So I know that you can't stay with us for the full episode tonight, but I'm so glad we got to meet you and see some of your work. Is there any final words that you'd like to leave us with before you have to go? And we can't wait to spend more time with you at the Confest when it happens.
Oh, I just wish I could stay. I'm so excited to hear the voices of the other incredible artists. of this panel and just engage the work. So I'll stay until 8 in the background, and then
And we'll also get to talk much more about your piece because we'll be talking with your director, Arpita, in the panel portion of the conversation.
Yeah, that is also what I want to say. It is strange talking about the show in this box alone, because there would be no show without Arpita. We really developed the show together, and so I'm very excited that she's here and is going to participate in this panel.
Thank you so much, Aya. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah.
So now we're going to take a look at a second work called The Red Chador, which has had many iterations. It's by performance artist Anayu Ali, who couldn't be with us tonight, but I do want to read to you some contextualization in her own words about this project. And it is a site-specific piece, and then we're going to see a video in which you'll hear her talk about her work as well. The Red Chador, the iteration that was proposed for the Confest in Hawaii is Genesis 1. It is envisioned as a participatory durational performance that examines the intersections of Native and refugee states of being in Hawaii while performers are fully covered in a quote-unquote Muslim headdress. In this ongoing series that continues the artist's thematic interest in using religious aesthetics to provoke ideas of otherness, performance artist Anita Yu Ali is accompanied by 6 other participants, each dressed in a unique sequin chador garment to engage the meaning of Muslim refugee status with respect to protocol in the Kingdom of Hawaii. So for today's episode, we will screen an earlier iteration of the Red Chador that was previously filmed in Hawaii while Anita was in residence at Shangri-La, a center of the Doris Duke Foundation for Islamic Art. And this provocative work will certainly inform our conversations later in the episode. So let's see the video.
Everyday folks should have the experience of contemporary art.
You know, one of the first things we thought was chador, fully clothed to a point it's overclothed in this weather. The Waikiki Beach, barely dressed, you know, bikini clad or surfers. So put them in juxtaposition, it's a winner.
It's a loaded image. How do you get them to do that double take, right, on an image or a video so that you can pull them into conversation? Because that's what's important, is actually having that dialogue. My name is Anita Yu Ali, and I'm a performance artist.
And I'm Masahiro Sugano, filmmaker, and the other half of Studio Revolt.
The original Red Chador project began in 2015. It was a response to the Charlie Hebdo massacres and the burqa ban that was happening in France. Thinking about whether or not to rebirth her, I really felt she had to come back to life in an epic way. And that meant that she wasn't going to be alone. So thus the multiple bodies. And in doing the research, we stumbled upon the idea of the rainbow and its huge significance here on this island as a pathway for celestial bodies to reappear. And then secondly, Hawaii legislatively has really pushed up against the Muslim ban when it was first introduced by the Trump regime. And so it felt like, you know, Shangri-La, the Islamic Museum, was the appropriate rebirth place for this. There were 2 photographic images that we were trying to execute at Shangri-La, and that is really our sort of leave behind commentary. One is, what does it mean to collect objects? But in this case, the flip of it is you're collecting the entire chadors with the human beings inside them.
We always challenge the idea of art in that like elite space. You know, how do we break the barrier? How do we make it less class divided?
Then the final shot of the day in a back alley with a DJ and break dancers. It's really a celebration of the Chadors being part of a global hip hop culture. I know that hip hop and the urban arts is a really big deal here within Hawaiian youth subculture. And so it was a moment to have that alignment in this end to the entire residency and production.
So that was a little bit of background and context and some images from the Red Chador, which is intended to be performed as a site-specific migratory piece when we are together in Hawaii. And this work for me inspired this idea of nomadic imagination. And what does that mean? How does it manifest in contemporary art? And you know, these questions that it brings up about representation, hyper visibility, as well as invisibility, and how one belongs or doesn't belong in an environment in which there are indigenous communities and tourist communities and people who have lived there for generations who are not indigenous, and new migrant communities that are arriving all the time. And so although Anita can't be with us in the conversation, she is with us in spirit, and we wanted to share her work to be part of this conversation that we're having this evening. But before we go to our panelists, we have a very, very special message from Jamil Khoury, who is the artistic director of Silk Road Rising in Chicago, and also a CAATA board member. And he isn't with us tonight because he is at an awards ceremony, and we wish him all the best this evening at the awards. And he's sent us much more to think about and reflect on, a quite wonderful, witty, and provocative framing statement. So we'll hear Jamil's video statement, and then we'll move to our conversation with the panelists. Let's see the video.
Hello, my name is Jamil Khoury, and I am the co-founder and co-executive artistic director of Silk Road Rising. It is an honor to be included in this evening's program, Nomadic Imagination, Transnational Homelands, and Cultural Return. In the assimilationist language so often ascribed to immigrant experiences, words like heritage and origin often imply past tense, that which was left behind. Yet for so many of us, nothing could be further from the truth. Heritage exists in past, present, and future tenses simultaneously. Our art making is inherently transnational, which is why we as artists find ourselves disrupting these increasingly false binaries of diaspora and homeland. Exile and rootedness are not mutually exclusive. Here and there fail to convey our psychic, spiritual, and sometimes physical experiences of community and belonging. I am the American-born son of a Syrian immigrant father. I have struggled with the occasional paradox of sometimes feeling more attached to people and events in Syria than to people and events a mile from my home in Chicago. And I say that as a proud, civically minded Chicagoan. I want us to think about what it means to speak of homelands in the plural sense, what it means to think of homelands as fluid and flexible. If home is where the heart is, then the heart is motionary. It is geographically polyamorous. We are transnational because our identities, our stories, and our affinities traverse and transcend the legal boundaries of any one nation state. Our imaginations are nomadic because they wander, they explore, they find sustenance and power in places and cultures and languages that compel us to create. Our imaginations are nomadic because they honor cultural integrity while challenging tribalism and nationalism. Our imaginations are nomadic because they allow us to leave and return with shifting points of departure and arrival. Remember, where are you from and where are you right now are multiple choice questions that allow for multiple answers. And on that note, thank you for helping the world heal.
Thank you so much, Jamil. Corey, I meant to mention he's not only a CAATA board member, he is also a founding steering committee of MNATMA, the Middle Eastern North African Theater Makers Alliance. And I particularly love this idea of being geographically polyamorous. I'm so excited that I have that new term in my life now. So thank you, Jamil. And now it is so exciting to welcome all these amazing panelists. And I understand that Aya is going to stay with us a little bit longer. I'll just say very briefly about all of these wonderful artists. I'm excited to be meeting Aya and Arpita tonight for the very first time in person. And I would like to also say a few words about Heather Raffo, who is an artist whose work has influenced me for a very, very long time, since 2003, when I first saw her perform 9 Parts of Desire in New York City. And am honored to be able to call a colleague and a friend, because I continue to be inspired by Heather's extraordinary work. And also Khalid Sawaf, who is a theater director and who I know from being together in the National Institute for Directing and Ensemble Creation, who is from Syria and currently lives in the United States. So welcome to all of you. I'd love for everyone to just take a moment and say hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi everyone.
Hello, hello.
Lovely to meet you all.
I'm very excited for you all to get to meet each other and to just, and I thank you for your willingness to just dive into the conversation. And so I wanted to begin by asking about kind of initial thoughts or responses to the artistic works, the excerpts and images that we saw in relation to the themes of tonight around nomadic imagination, homeland and cultural return. And also Jamil's statement, which had so many juicy, wonderful things to respond to in it. So I want us to be very conversational and to share, whatever's on your mind. And I do have some prompt questions, but we can really go with wherever the juice is in the conversation. So would anyone, I will say that we haven't heard from yet, like to begin? Oh, see, now we're all being shy. I think I would like to begin with Heather or Khalid because Arpita is one of the art makers and knows that work very well. And I think you two might be encountering both Ada and the Red Shore for the first time tonight. So would either of you like to begin about how these themes either play a role in your work or what's resonating with you from the work that we saw this evening?
Yeah, well, I'll start, throw something out there that I thought it's so interesting that both works took something that an audience would know very well, as in a Chador or Aladdin, and then completely repurposed it or redefined it or began to use it in their own way. And I think that is something that I've seen across theme in lots of work. And I find it really interesting. And I think it's interesting for many reasons, both because the artists themselves are trying to break with stereotype or repurpose stereotype, but also because sometimes even when you don't use anything of the sort, the audience brings it in with them
That's right.
no matter what you do. So then you're sitting there as the artist, having not even alluded to or referenced, and then they start to put it on your work, no matter what. So I just think it's a really, I think you could see in just two examples, only two ways people are trying to deal kind of with the audience they have, or the audience they know what the questions are going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for that, Heather. That's it. That definitely is an experience. I saw a lot of snapping and head shaking that I think we've all had. Khalid, did you have some thoughts you'd like to share?
Yes, first of all, I wanted to say how inspiring it is to be in this space with everyone here. Thank you so much for this invite. And I absolutely agree with what Heather beautifully put, and the element of, I also agree with what you, Andrea, mentioned about the moment of, in the Ada, questions for my father, the moment of taking off, starting with a specific image and then taking that off on stage, and metaphorically and physically, was such a powerful moment, and such a powerful of like, okay, come here with me to the stereotype. I'm coming with you. Let's go. And then I'm going to tear that stereotype away for you. And that's really beautifully done, and is something that I'm sure each person who's done work has navigated that question and thought about it and is alive with that. How do we, the expectations and the stereotypes and the work that is put on an identity or a religion or a country or a geography or a language, as soon as you place it in a piece of work, and how do you navigate that path, and do you tear it apart gently? Do you tear it apart not gently? I'm excited to be in presence with all of those options.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Arpita, we haven't gotten to hear from you yet, and you're the director of Ada, Questions for My Father, and we were all just talking about that scene and that transition. What's on your minds about seeing the other pieces and your own artistic process and the kind of provocations that Jamil raised in his statement?
Thank you so much for having me here. It's so inspiring to be here with everyone today. These wonderful artists whose work I love and that inspires me. Yeah, I think that it's so interesting to see both of these works with each other, and I'm really excited about that that conversation, because I think something we were really deliberate about is that we did want to bring the audience into this play. We did want, and we wanted to confront even Aya's discomfort of telling the story to this audience, which is sort of how I think we are working and thinking all the time. And we put that a vulnerability of who am I to tell the story, sort of like upfront, and I think because of and there's something sort of like a confrontation and then disarming, which is that there is this confrontation of, and because even at talkbacks, people would tell us that they were so into the play at that moment when the Avesta change happens. And what I noticed in Anita's work as well is that there's this, I'm so intrigued by this, I'm disarmed by it, and it is also confronting me. That I feel like that tension of is so interesting, because it wasn't that after that moment of the change, it's then Aya coming on and being like, I don't know how to tell the story. So you're sort of in terms of what Khalud's talking about, in terms of that gently, you're sort of manipulating is probably the wrong word, but crafting this relationship with the audience so that you can make these gestures. And that was very sort of, I would sit in the audience and watch the story unfold sometimes. So to kind of make them part of the question was important to us. And I felt that in Anita's work so much, that tension as well. Yeah.
Thank you for making that connection. That's really wonderful. One of the things that I'm often, that I'm curious about, and then I'll turn to Aya before she has to go, is that, do we, the kind of development of it takes different forms, whether we say Mina or Manasa or Middle Eastern American, and whether that includes South Asia or doesn't. There's and whether it includes North Africa or doesn't in the framework of Asian America, right? We live in these very fluid and overlapping and sometimes crashing into each other identity spaces, right? That we're constantly navigating. And yet I wonder in the last 20 years if there has been something evolving that we could call a shared aesthetic or themes that are connected or that continually come up in our work. And perhaps it is around this relationship to homelands and cultural return and memory and loss and looking and imagining new futures. I'm not really sure, but I don't know. What do you think about those connections and seeing arising in your own work and in the work that you see of other artists in our communities, in our rather overlapping communities? I'll toss it over to you unless somebody else wants to jump in.
In many ways, I see a lot of class similarities or experience. I think, and Arpita and I would talk about this kind of, and I don't want to speak for you, Arpita, but this idea of belonging to a generation of our parents who perhaps didn't have the opportunity or freedom to dream and be whoever they wanted to be, in the same way that our generation, or at least my generation, has had the ability to. And I think that, so kind of I see shared experiences in diaspora, and a kind of reckoning across artists of our generation of a home that they feel distanced from because of, and a home they feel distanced from, not only geographically and culturally, but also in containing the dissonance between kind of a life of privilege and material things, and also a life of possibility, and a home that is so disenfranchised and so, I think, they're so disenfranchised and so in ways that I don't want to feel. I'm not being my most eloquent in this, but something that really struck me, let's say, is when a friend of mine went to visit her family in Pakistan, and was kind of blown away by the air pollution, no pun intended, but was struck by lack of access to healthcare, lack of mobility, struck by what it meant for her family to be middle class in Pakistan versus, her life in the United States. And this is not somebody of upper class background. This is also someone of a working class background of first generation origin. But the dissonance between kind of the life in the United States and diaspora, and life back in home countries and the countries of our parents, and kind of containing that knowledge of the world, and kind of speaking to a global system of class subjugation, and I think that's what I think of when I look at when I see kind of similarities in belonging, and also kind of a confusion of belonging, and a kind of reckoning between what we know as home and what home is here, and why these things are so different, and how fairness plays and across both spaces. So
yeah, this is a really interesting, us definitely complicates and the conversation about experiences in our communities, right? And it also, I think, then the kind of class references we have both in the United States and globally, then also influence who we might align ourselves with here in the United States. Like, you know, there perhaps more similarities among migrant workers, regardless of homeland, home country, than there are between classes in our own cultural group, perhaps. You know what I mean? And so that's a really interesting conversation that we don't often have, the intersection of class and cultural identity. That is a difficult one to have in the United States, certainly, because class, I think, often remains a taboo conversation that we're not always having in an intersectional way when we try to talk about race and culture. So I thank you for bringing that up. It's very interesting to me. Does anybody else in the panel want to respond to that before I ask another question? I know it's a really complex and provocative topic.
I mean, I'll respond to the question because I'm not sure. I think I understood it differently. You're asking kind of in the Manasa theater, what are the themes or the movements that we've been seeing? Is that correct? Yeah. So I'll just say that my perspective is really stepping back and taking that in context of 2 decades or 2 decades and a half of work. And I think that as we saw tonight as well, this theme of translation has always been very present. As in, do we need to, are the artists themselves trying to translate something for this audience, right? Or translate something for on behalf of our homeland? And I think for a long time, the real struggle within the community, no matter what we were writing or whatever our personal stakes in wanting to be a translator or not, we were really searching for the ability to be proved valid. We didn't need validation for our work per se. It was just the right to be produced. And so that validity itself just took so long. It just took decades, right? And so even though now one can say there is more of that, there was still a gatekeeper, right? And the gatekeeper could exist even outside the American theater. Like it could still exist in a theater of color, right? That you had to, what I'm trying to say is that the producerial element of the art that demanded that the audience be translated for was just a whole process that I've watched grow over decades, but not necessarily change over decades. So if you ask about me as just an artist and what I might want to do or say, you know, you can grow and you can say, I don't want to say any of that stuff. I just want to say what I want to say, right? But there's all these kind of walls in front of you. So to say there are commonalities, yes. What I think is probably the most interesting of all is the moment we're in right now. Because for me, the moment we're in right now negates the very idea that the audience is American or possibly even white or possibly in need of translation at all, ever. Because the audience in my house right now, let's say, could be my mom who doesn't go to the theater ever walking past me, right? Or could be anyone anywhere in the world. So like we're suddenly in a very different moment of who we do it for and what the conversation is around it. And I think that is so exciting. And even though the American theater is changing epically right now, I think we're also going to take this back into it, and that will forever change how Manasa theater artists even need to approach their producers, let alone approach the art they want to make.
Thank you for that. I know we're going to have to let Aya go while we continue the conversation. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. Aya, any final words before you have to leave us?
Heather, that was so well said. Thank God you responded to that question. No, but yeah.
I'm too old to not respond to that question after all the decades in the business.
Oh, it's been such a joy being in community with all of you and your brilliant minds. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you for joining us.
More of your work.
Yes, we look forward to staying connected. See you.
Bye.
So that is actually kind of where my next question was going about the moment that we're in now. Heather and I have actually had these conversations about how for us, the two of us, in some ways, the post 9/11 era from 2001 to now and the aftermath of 9/11, the ongoing wars have impacted and in some ways formed our work as artists in such deep and ongoing ways. And then suddenly, while that hasn't ended, there are these new waves of political realities to respond to. Like I know that Khaloud's life and work has been personally and deeply impacted by the travel ban of the Trump administration, the Muslim ban. And suddenly we're in COVID, in this new era where we're trying to reimagine theater itself and our lives and what safety and human connection means. And we're still kind of processing like wave after wave of these historical moments that are that deeply affect our lives and work and who we are as artists. And so that's kind of my question. Do you feel a shift happening? Like Heather just talked about the shift she feels happening. Do we feel like we're entering a new era? And if we are, what is it that you feel like we're entering politically or aesthetically? Arpita or Khaloud want to respond to that, or anything that was said previously?
I don't know that I'm qualified to say if we're entering an era or not. You know, I'm very much present in the moment and trying to it's a good to start, you know, it's good to have like a jumping off point where there is not a law that bans you from existing. So that's a good jumping off point, let's say. But I don't know yet how does that affect the work, because I think it will take time for us to discover what that means. I certainly agree with Heather that it's a very exciting moment to remove limitations in terms of access to working with each other. And suddenly the world is your oyster to collaborate with whoever can collaborate with whoever, as long as you have access to internet and technology, which I of course acknowledge that not everybody does have that privilege. But that's such an exciting moment to imagine. What does that mean aesthetically? What does that mean linguistically? What does that mean in terms of who we are doing this work for? Suddenly, if I'm doing a piece such as 10,000 Balconies, I want to make sure my family in Damascus can actually know what I'm saying. So I can't do it mostly in English. I have to make sure it has more Arabic in it, and then we'll figure out how do we where do I dance between the cultural translation, how beautifully said also by Heather. So I think it's such an exciting moment in terms of aesthetics, and also be exposed to other work, how beautiful it is to be here and be able to witness a piece by a company in the UK that I really, I'm watching their work, how beautiful it is to be able to be here and witness work in Lebanon. And I think because of this moment, we are able to imagine that. We've had it all along, but for some reason now we're actually doing it, and it's really exciting to do that. But I don't know what that means yet moving forward. I really do hope as we spin the new plates, we don't leave, as we're able to move forward past this moment, we're not okay, now I want the past back, because we can't do, now that we have had this access, it's really beautiful to hold on to it, and it's really inspiring, and I really hope we all aspire to do that.
Yeah, I definitely think there are some shifts that are deep enough that they're not going to go back to exactly how our theater experience was before. And certainly our audiences and our communities now have a different expectation of us than they did before. And I don't think they're going to want to let go of it. And so we have to figure out how we re-enter the live, and also keep and expand the access of this virtual world that we're living in for the time being. Arpita, how do you envision this impacting your work, or how you're thinking about theater now?
Yeah, it's so, I feel like because of the moment we're in, and I'm speaking more specifically about the pandemic and not being able to be in a space together, I think really forces us to ask, what is theater? What does it mean to make theater? And it has really made me, and I was sort of questioning this in my practice for a little bit, but the pandemic, what makes it not television and film, and really sort of, and now with more and more playwrights and sort of theater makers going to film and television, I think it really forces us to sort of reckon with, what is theater? What do I want out of an experience? I know that I've always said that there are financial barriers, but there are also incredible cultural barriers to the way we go to the theater, which actually contribute to probably some decline in going to what do we love to go to? What's the first thing we're going to go to when we can gather? It's going to be probably spaces of joy, of community, where we can just be. We don't have to turn our phones off and be quiet and sit in the dark. And so I'm really sort of thinking about what, and trying to expand actually the definition of theater. And it kind of also speaks to at Hypocrite specifically, and thinking of theater as live event rather than a well-made play. And it sort of came out of, because most of our audiences don't read the New York Times. They don't, they're not theater, regular, always going to the theater. Hypocrite is their theater home. And when we ask them questions, we get the most, if you listen to audiences, they're like, what is a reading? Or they ask questions that I think industry has sort of imbibed in us. And I think if we want more sort of work to happen and the industry to thrive, we have to sort of think about producing models and think about what is it. And I think it's really showing up on Zoom and the online platforms of incredible live theater that is being made, because that is our skill. It is to have you experience something and feel engaged in it in that moment. And so that's something, that I am is sort of really thinking about, of how we want to think about what makes this theater. Ask that question to everything we make, because there's a lot of experiences people can have passively sitting at home on Netflix or any other platform. So I think that I'm questioning the form and theater as a way to also create more space for artists. So, yeah.
And speaking of space, I know, Khalud, you've been doing work with curbside theater and trying to reimagine how you use space to still be able to make live work that people can see. Do you want to talk a little bit about those experiments?
Sure, thank you. It's actually an idea that was born out of the pandemic, and the idea was created by a friend and collaborator. Her name is Laura Shatkis, and she's the artistic director of a small theater company here in Fayetteville called Arkansas Staged. And it really was coming from the place of like, how do we do it as opposed to we do it. And we started gathering, a small group of artists started gathering over Zoom, and we were devising a new piece using moment work technique. And then once we started wanting to rehearse it in a physically shared space, that's when we were really going about how do we do it safely, and we're creating audience agreement to make sure this is safe for them, artist agreement, COVID artist agreement, and making sure like what's the way of reporting to each other if you're exposed, what's the way to, how do we handle props, how do we handle, and we had part of the creation, we had a character who's like a clown who's obsessed with cleanliness, so that helped us a lot because it was like she was cleaning everything. So that was really just handy. Yes, and it was really exciting to be able to take that piece into different backyards, front yards, in front of nursing home facilities, and so forth, so on and so forth. And the weather was hot, but it was doable during. It was just on time to do it, and it was like a 35-minute show that was community funded and was offered for the community for free.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to go back to something that Heather said earlier about, well, and also that we've all been talking about how now it's almost like we don't just have to have these transnational homelands that are far away and that we cannot reach, but that that actually can zoom in and actually like be with us and be in the experience of the work that we're making. So I directed a reading with some former cast members of production of 9 Parts of Desire, and Heather joined us, and the cast members who were university students at the University of South Florida the first time that they did the production now are young adults and emerging artists all over the world. One was actually in Japan during the reading, and one of the actresses is from Nigeria, and her family, who had never gone to see, you know, what we call theater in a theater in Nigeria ever before, were able to tune in, even though it was, I think, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning for them. There was a Nigerian audience for 9 Parts of Desire that was happening online as a reading here in the United States. And that it was such a wonderfully, beautifully rich experience to know that our notion of audience has completely changed. And so Heather, I wanted to ask you if you wanted to say anything about that experience, and where is it taking you when you think about future work or what you want to do to create next as a playwright or as a performer?
Well, I mean, it completely changes, as you said, the notion of what is audience, but it also, at least, it takes away the ticket price too, which, having had to be a theater maker in New York for a good couple decades, you know, if I live somewhere else, which I'd quite like to do, I might have a new perspective, but I can't afford to go to the theater in my hometown. I can't go see my friends in plays because I can't. Who can afford it, right? So now we're not only saying that like the theater is affordable, but it's you know, it's international. And I know that artists need to be paid, including myself. You know, like sustainability is is key to all our lives. But I do think the notion of what is an audience and how are they engaged and what are they even writing in the Zoom chat could be really, will be taken forth into the theater forevermore, because nobody wants to go back to a lot of other things at the same moment that we do want to go back to the magic of being in a live shared space versus this other live space. And I agree with you, Arbita, entirely. I love theater as a live event. The play I'm working on is a pretty huge epic about migration in the global economy. And it takes place in scenes around the world. And when I started writing it and had written for a year, I thought, oh, this is just an unproducible play. Why do I keep writing this? It could never get produced. I mean, it doesn't even, each scene doesn't even connect to the other. It literally just bops around the world. And none of it started to make sense as anything actually doable until the idea of doing it virtually. And now it's just clear that, you know, the scene that is in Nigeria and Norway and El Paso can either take place in all those places, or like the theater itself will migrate for this piece. And that's been very fun to explore.
That's incredible. I feel similarly that when sort of it was presented in the beginning, okay, we're going to do things on Zoom, I was like, no, I do not want to do things on Zoom. And then it was sort of the project I was developing that were the most unproducible, in the sense we thought, oh, this is going to take a long time, we're never going to do it because this is about food and Bollywood, and you know, it's how are we going to do it with people? It's like, that's the first one we're doing. And then the second one we're doing is a video game that, you know, so it's sort of, it kind of took away a lot of the barriers and then it made me think that the barrier wasn't so much even it needing to be live. It was the barrier is often the building. I mean, most of the ticket price is going towards sustaining a building, not artists, not creative thought, but just a building that has existed for several, and you know, and we're still building more buildings and creating more barriers for people to get to those buildings, and then complaining that we don't have audiences. It's like quite, you know, and then it's like you take the building away, you forget about the building, you just take the play where it wants to go, and it's totally different. And I totally agree. I don't think we can go back to now come into this building, because now the building represents some scary things as well. You know, so besides, it used to represent privilege. Actually, what a building represents is also changing. We want open air more than we want to be inside in a building. So it's all going to, I just hope that it stays, because I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm so hopeful about this change, but all I know is that I want to incorporate it into my artistic practice and the way we make work at Hypocrite. I just hope that that translates, because once you're forced to innovate, you shouldn't go back. Nobody orders food anymore after Seamless the way they did. Like, let's just go with it. It's shifted, it's changed, you know? So that's something I've been thinking about a lot, the unproducible play.
In the very exciting,
go ahead, Kholu, go ahead.
The very exciting thing about this moment is that Zoom account is equal to any theater in the country's Zoom account. We just have the same Zoom account, because buildings are meaningless. So yeah, you can just do it.
You've all quite organically shifted into what was going to be my last question, which is, what are you most excited about right now? This is such a moment. And honestly, when we were planning this session, I didn't know what kind of moment we would be in as a nation, or, you know, what feelings we would be bringing to the conversation. And there's still a lot of uncertainty ahead. but it feels like there is space to have a breath and to be excited about future and to begin to plan. And so I'm wondering, like, what are you most excited about? And I think I want to start with Khulud, because I'm also very, very curious about this transmedia performance conversation that you've been a part of with other artists around the country. And so I'm curious about what's popping up for you out of that, and also just what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, I think this moment definitely, I come from a film background before I started doing theater, and I think this moment really put my older career and my most recent one in conversation a lot. And I think having that conversation and thinking, like, we think about film in a shot based, like the currency for film is the shot, and the currency for the theater is the scene. So when the scene and the shot are in conversation to come up with a three unit that we look at, that's really what I'm investigating and thinking about constantly. And I'm really excited about the moment where those two mediums mix in a third something that feels like, I don't know what that means yet. Is it really something virtual present in the physical space that maybe they're having conversation with each other? Is it something else? I don't know, but all of those possibilities are really exciting, and I'm thinking about it constantly. And definitely the transmedia space that I've been doing, and shout out to Claudia, Alec, that we've been doing, that conversation that we've been doing weekly is very informative and really wonderful. Just to be with artists in the space in a peer exchange conversation where artists are just really figuring it out constantly and finding new ways to produce and create and be really wonderful and creative.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Heather, what are you excited about or dreaming of as future work, or just finding joy in?
Well, I'm really excited about the first Asian American female vice president. I just wanted to say at this, this particular conference, we must mention that.
Oh, yes. We might do more than mention it if we can.
We must mention it always, right? So I'm very excited about that. Yeah. No, I think I've mentioned most of the things I'm excited about. I'll say something. Yeah, I'll add to that because of the title of this conference and the things that I'm reckoning with, having spent 20, 30 years kind of reckoning with my Iraqi father's birthplace of Mosul and homeland and elements of that in my writing. I know that happened because when I was 20, there was the first war with Iraq. And there's been all these, let's say, violences since that have related me to that. And so my constant pull to conversation has been because it felt those two cultures were incommensurable, the American culture with the Iraqi culture, and that I was trying to investigate narrative that would upend both. But what's very, very interesting, having spent the last 8 months in Michigan due to my father's passing and needing to take care of my mom, is I had to reckon with my true birthplace. Like, I wasn't born in Iraq. I reckoned with my birthplace of Michigan. I reckoned with my hometown. I reckoned with, so when I was conceived and the first 4 years of my life, we lived in this very tiny little duplex. And sure enough, I found myself living in a rental, like a 5-minute walk from this duplex for the first 2 months, because I was quarantining from my mom, who then I had to move into her basement and take care of. So anyway, what I mean by all that is conversation for me right now that's hugely alive in my work is the conversation of the swing state. is the other incremental conversation that I'm also can get right in the middle of and navigate because of, you know, family on both sides and lots of people I know on both sides, and just feeling like I'm this artist that wants to understand that narrative in a really complex way. And I think that that is something the theater and the arts might be a part of or be up for reckoning with. I know as artists, we tend to have very strong opinions on our side and want to put them out and put them forth. And I do, and we all do, and we want that. But I'm also very interested in where the actual conversation is and where it's difficult and how to write in that and with that.
I think we might need to get a Michigan, Florida conversation going, Heather. So Florida, we need some help down here, y'all.
Wait.
It's complicated. Huh?
I said Arkansas.
Yeah.
Right?
Hello, Arkansas. Yeah.
Leave her out.
I think I'll be moving first.
We are moving toward a close. Arkansas, do you want to just tell us what you're excited about?
Yeah, I wanted to just point out that my home state is Virginia, which had its moment in 2008 and 12, and then moved on from being the swing state, so nobody comes here anymore. So I have a lot of questions about the Electoral College and democracy. Yeah, I think I'm really excited about these conversations. I'm excited. I am consistently inspired by what all other theater artists are doing, especially BIPOC artists. And I was making a joke to someone that we're going to be fine because nobody produced our stuff before anyway. So we're just going to figure it out. We're just going to go do it because we've been having to do that. So I'm excited about having more opportunities to collaborate and taking this breath and talking to people. And I feel like I'm in a great school of learning how creative and how innovative artists can be. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all the work that we're talking about today.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us tonight and being part of what a wonderful conversation. I feel excited just to have been a part of it and to get to hear what you're all thinking. And thank you for sharing it with a wider audience. You can see the whole episode on HowlRound and share it there or Facebook Live. I want to give a shout out to not only CAATA, but also Manatma. And you can learn more about Manatma by visiting minatheatermakers.org, which I encourage you to do. It is a growing community and national network that has a strong, deep relationship with CAATA, and we're all glad for those continuing conversations. And thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Khulud. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Arpita. I can't wait till we can be together again in person and in more virtual spaces.
Thank you, Andrea.
So, yes.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And so we're going to move toward our closing slides. I want to give a shout out to Max, who is behind the scenes doing tech, and Ariel, who helped make this whole session happen. Please mark your calendars for our next episode in the Return to the Source CAATA series, which will be Monday, December 14th. From the Source, Seeds for a Myriad of Worlds, hosted by Roger Tang of Porkfield Players. And we hope you will very much join us for that and the ongoing series into 2021. I'd like to thank our funders and supporters, giving mahalo and a shout out and thanks definitely to HowlRound for live streaming with us tonight, and also to all the wonderful supporters in our field that you see on the screen: CAATA Productions, the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, Ford Foundation, NIFA, the University of Hawaii in Manoa, who will be our host for the in-person Confest when we're able to gather again, TCG, and all of the supporters that you see on the screen. Thank you all for making tonight and this whole series possible. And we hope you will join us again in December. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Be well, stay safe, take care, and we hope to see you again soon. Good night.